Alright, so day 5 is the slope point form. We've been working with the slope intercept form in the previous couple days where y equals mx plus b. But today we're going to be more general. We're going to say, okay, well, what if you had any point and the slope? Could you generate an equation of the line? And yes, you can. So if you look at this formula, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1 in a bracket. If you were to divide out that x minus 1, then what you have is just a formula for the slope. So this equation is just the slope formula rearranged. So there's nothing fancy here. But rather than using a y2 and an x2, you see how that's missing? You know how it's like y2 take away y1, x2 take away x? Well, they just make y and x in general. Okay, so in order to use this form, the following must be known. Any point and the slope. You write down the formula. x1 will go right here. And y1 will go right here. Maybe I'll use a different color for the y. So you just do a substitution. The point that you're going to use goes in there where the blue is, and the point for the y goes in there where the pink is. And make sure you leave the minus sign. The minus sign has to be. Why do you have to have the minus signs in the formula? Well, it comes from the formula for slope. And slope, you have to do a difference. So those minus signs have to be there. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's do an example. Just an easy example. Let's say our point is 2, comma, negative 3. Let's say that's our point that we're going to use. And then let's say that our slope is 1/2. Or let's go 1/4. All right, so what do I put in for the pink? What goes in there for the pink? Louder? Negative 3. So you go y take away negative 3 equals, what goes in for the light green there? The slope, which is 1/4. Now you open up a bracket. This is multiplication. And now what goes in for the blue? X take away 2. So that's the substitution. So what's going to happen on the left when you sub in a negative? You'll get y subtracting negative 3. That'll come out to a plus 3. The 1/4 you leave, and the x minus 2 you leave. This right here is an equation in the slope point form. Okay, so for the past couple days we've been doing y equals mx plus b. That's the slope intercept form. This one's the slope point form. What causes confusion is the fact that you used a negative value, but yet the equation says positive. That is the number one source of confusion. But the formula dictates that you must use a subtraction. So if you put in a negative and you subtract a negative, you're going to end up with a positive. So you have to be aware of that. So now let's work backwards. We're going to use the equation to find the point. So what I'd like you to do is write right up underneath it is put y take away y1 equals m x take away x1. And then just ask yourself, especially if you line it up like this, how much easier is it to identify what is what? So which point have we used? Okay, let's start from left to right. We put y take away 2, and the formula is y take away y1. So what must y1 be? Exactly 2. Good. Now the slope m is exactly 1/3. You can see it lines up right underneath it. And then this is where it gets tricky. It says x take away x1, but we have x plus 4. So the x1 must be -4. Good. So if you don't study, this is definitely going to be a possible source of confusion during the exam, okay? And it really will set you back. It'll be tough to graph, but you'll have the wrong point. I might be able to give you some part marks, but probably not. So you make sure that you remember this distinction. Okay, so now we graph the equation. So what do you need to graph the equation? Well, you need to plot that point. So plot this. It's 4 to the left and 2 up from the origin. That should be no problem at this point in your life. 4 to the left and 2 up. Plot that point. Now you have to use the slope to get the next point. So what I like to do with the slope, what does slope dude always go to the? Slope dude always goes to the right. So which one of those, top or bottom, which one of these, numerator or denominator, is the run? So you got to go 3 to the right. And then because this is +1, we're going to go up. If it was negative, you'd go down. But if you always orient yourself to the right, then it's not too bad to figure this out. So 3 to the right and 1 up, right? And you can see here 3 to the right and 1 up. So 1, 2, 3 boxes to the right and 1 box up. And then all you need now is your straight edge and connect. I kind of missed. And then what do you always put on the ends? In math class, we put on the arrows. In science class, you can typically omit those arrows. Okay, and if you want, you can put the rise and the run there to help you. You feeling okay about this? All right, next page. It says write an equation in slope point form. Okay? Slope point form. Might be a good idea to start with the formula. This formula will be given to you on your data sheet. You do not have to memorize these. Okay? If I look at my graph, they've given me 2 points and no slope. So if you're given 2 points but not the slope, can you solve that problem yourself? What do you do with those 2 points? Find the slope. These perfect points, you can just count. 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right. 1, 2, 3 up. So the slope is the rise divided by the run. Now, when you go to use this formula for the slope point, how many points do you need? Just one. But you have two available to you. Does it matter which one you pick? It does not matter which one you pick. I would prefer the easier one. It will be easier to push in positives than it is to push in negatives. So I'm going to use the point in the first quadrant there. That point is 3, 1. All right. So using the point 3, 1 and the slope 3/4, I can now insert these things into my equation. So y take away the y1, the slope, and x take away the x1. Okay, so here comes the hard part, is part B. You have to write the equation in slope-intercept form. So we have to make it look like y equals mx plus b. So this is purely practicing algebra. That's all it is. So I'm starting with the point slope. This is the point slope. And I'm going to do some algebra to make it into y equals mx plus b. The first thing I'm going to do is distribute 3/4. So 3/4 goes in and multiplies. You have 3/4 times x, which is written as 3/4 x. And then you have 3/4 multiplying 3, which is just 9/4. So when you multiply fractions, you literally just times the tops and times the bottoms. And then you want to go to lowest terms. Looking at some of your guys' quiz, some of you still aren't doing that, lowest terms. So why did 3/4 times 3 become 9/4? 3/1, yeah. So you have 3 times 3 in the top and 4 times 1 in the bottom. Okay, I'll write that on the whiteboard here for you guys. 3/4 times -3/1. You get -9/4. Okay, this is looking really close to y equals mx plus b, but we still have an issue. What's the issue? The -1 is still in the way. For slope-intercept form, what do you need by itself? The y. So what do I have to do to both sides? So you add 1, add 1. Remember that you have to add like terms. Take off your music and put that paper in the garbage. You have to add like terms. So does the 1 go with the 3/4 x? No, the 1 goes with 9/4. So now you have to add fractions. So what's -9/4 plus 1? I'll do this on the whiteboard for you guys. -9/4 plus 1. What would 1 look like with the denominator of 4? 4/4. Is 4/4 a whole? So this is 1. -9 plus 4, -5/4. I appreciate that not everybody in here has fun with fractions. Some people are quite annoyed with fractions. You can use your calculator to support you. Okay, please pay attention if fractions are not your friend. So you had -9/4 and then you had to add 1. What you can do now is hit math, enter, enter. Okay? So for some of you that really don't like those fractions, you can use the calculator. Okay, so final answer, y equals 3/4 x minus 5/4. So 3/4 is the slope. We already knew that. Doesn't really give us any new information. What does this minus 5/4 represent? It represents the y-intercept. There's that y-intercept at negative 5/4, which is 1.25. See how it's 1.25? And it's down. Okay, let's try the next one. Number 3, write an equation for the line that passes through the point and is parallel to this line. So for question A, what's the slope of this line? 2/3. So if I wanted something parallel to that, what slope would I use? Parallel lines have what slopes? Parallel lines have equal slopes. Except I have to use this point. Okay. Help me sub in my values. What goes next to y? Y take away? Very nice. The m is? Very nice. X take away 1. You've been standing there for what, 5 seconds?
Yes.
And you picked that up?
Yes.
Because you can recognize symbols, right? It's just symbols. Good. Now we can simplify. We get y plus 1, 2/3 outside of x minus 1. Whoa. Do you have to convert that to mx plus b form? Only if you're told. This is fine. You can leave it there. This is good work. This is worth marks. This is good stuff. A more advanced student will be able to convert this to mx plus b using algebra. That's a tough skill. Okay? Make sure you really try to practice that. Okay, well, what if we wanted to do a line perpendicular to this? Well, it's going to be the exact same thing, but instead of 2/3, what would we put? Yeah, good. Very nice. So from 2/3 to minus 3/2, and the terminology for that is negative reciprocal. That's when you see this word perpendicular. Negative reciprocal. Goes through the same point, but it's going to be perpendicular rather than parallel. So the red graph was the original graph we were given. We were asked to find a line parallel to it. The red was the original. The blue is the line that's parallel going through which point? 1 comma -1, right? It's 1 over and 1 down right there. And then we were also asked to find a line perpendicular. Well, that's the green one. And perpendicular, you can see the rise and the run have completely switched. Blue goes up to the right, green goes down to the right, and you get that 90-degree angle in there. Okay, let's do one more, and then you guys can have time to do the homework. Start with the equation. Now for the first one, what's the key word? Parallel. So what is the slope of this line here? 3 over 1. Good. So I can sub in here. Where I see the m, I can put a 3. So I've placed everything except for the 2 points. Notice I have the minuses in there. I got the brackets in there. So where does this -3 go? Next to the y. And where does this 2 go? Next to the x. So then we get y plus 3 multiplied by 3x minus 2. Again, this is called the slope point form. This will be parallel to the other line they gave us, but going through a different point, going through a different sets of points. Now, if I want to switch to a line that's perpendicular, what do I do to this slope? Negative reciprocal. So then what do I get? -1 over 3 will be the negative reciprocal of the integer 3. Okay? So here's the assignment. There's only 4 questions. I want you to give it an honest go.